morning and welcome to another segment of the Dr. Marj Show. I'm so excited. This is the month of March, and as you know, it kicks off a very instrumental time for us. Not only is it Women's History Month, but also it is the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. Who I have in the studio this morning are people that you know, people who have been very, very advantageous in our community in providing support and services. With us, we have Mr. Lee Bohannon and Mr. Ted Runnels. Thank you guys so much. I feel really awkward calling them Mr. because they have been in my life most of my growing years, but I'm just thankful that they're here this morning so that we can revisit a place and time in Kansas City that meant a lot to us who are familiar with the community, and that is the Social Action Committee of 20. Which I was told this morning it was actually the Social Action Committee of 20 organizations. And so we're going to go into a little bit of the historical aspect of that, knowing that it was founded around the time of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And the birth came from an opportunity of the many organizations in the greater Kansas City area, the many of the African American organizations in the greater Kansas City area who came together and said, let's have one voice for our people. So with that, let's talk about what you guys remember. You're the best storytellers because you are the people who were there during that time.
Well, Marj, first let me say that I am honored to be here. You know, when you see your family doing things.
Yes.
And as you say, been knowing you for a long time, and to be able to see you do this and we be part of it at this point, I just want to let you know we're proud of you, Marj.
Well, thank you for hearkening to the call. Yes.
Yeah, but when Martin Luther King passed away, I was working as a machine adjuster at Tension Envelope Company. And I was actually not involved into civil rights or anything. We lived in projects, and my brother had a bass fiddle that he played, and he had missed a class. And I promised him that he would never miss another class because you can't get your bass. He'd have to walk from Manual High School on 15th Street to Wayne Minor Projects carrying the bass, so when it come time to have class, he didn't have that class. And this was one of the days that I needed to take him back to school with his bass. And we were on the way to school, and I saw a group of people that were standing outside the school. I had not even considered the fact that this was the day for Martin Luther King's funeral and it was a demonstration, because I was working at Tension, and I stopped to talk to them. Okay. And that's literally how I got involved. They talked me into parking my car and getting out and walking that day with them and listening to what they had to say that day changed my whole life.
Okay. And Ted, tell me your involvement, and I know that you both had different organizations. I learned that this morning also. Here I'm thinking, you know, these are my brothers. My brother was a part of it, that I knew everything, and I realized that I did not know everything, that they all came from different organizations, as I stated earlier. And the organization that you were in, Lee, was?
It was the Black Youth of America. But it did not start until later on in '68.
Okay.
I was not a member of the Black Youth of America in the beginning because my introduction to community work was listening to those children wanting somebody to walk with them that morning.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's roll over to my brother Ted here. And your involvement was not originally with SAC 20, but what organization?
Well, I was president of a small group out in South Kansas City at the time, called the Black Youth of the South Side. Okay. And I had been involved with different aspects of the community movement through Bernard Powell. And Bernard Powell had been my brother-in-law. Okay. And so I would try to tag along with him to different meetings, CORE and Congress for Racial Equality and different stuff like that, and go to different community meetings. So I organized the young people in my neighborhood into a group and thrust into the situation on the day of Martin Luther King's funeral. They didn't let the high schools out in Kansas City. And we wanted to be at home watching the funeral on TV. Yes. I was at Paseo High at the time. They refused to put it on TV and let us come to the auditorium and watch it. And we got word that kids were leaving Central and Lincoln and Manual and other schools. and going downtown to the school board to protest. So, you know, we left the school and ended up downtown, and that's where I first met. Well, I didn't meet him that day, but that was the first time I saw Mr. Bohannon.
Okay.
Him and Vernon Thompson and Bernard Powell. They were trying to talk to the young people down at the school board. We were out in front. And that was the beginning, you know, of being involved with it on the level that we became involved over the years. The riots started that same day in Kansas City.
Right.
And I think we saw a need to organize into one group, as Lebo said, and try to better serve the community.
Okay, and so my brother, who was Jerry Williams,
Jerry
Vernon Welton, and there was another person who had was it the Black Youth of the East Side? Is that what there was another organization?
That was your brother and Vernon Welton.
Okay.
They were the Black Youth of the East Side.
Okay.
Carrie Arrington.
Gary, it was my cousin, bless his heart, yes, okay.
And there was a few ministers in the community were really involved at that time in the beginning days. Reverend Don Priestside and Reverend Kirkendall.
Yeah, Reverend Kirkendall.
Right.
And
You know,
Phil Lawson.
Yeah,
Okay.
Phil Lawson.
Yeah, Phil Lawson was the pastor of the church that on the east side that really supported the community.
Okay.
And then he was no longer at that church, but the east side activity continued under the leadership of EV and those guys.
Okay, and so now we have the organizations throughout the greater Kansas City area who have come together as one voice, and then becomes the birth of SAC 20, which the leader was Bernard Powell during that time, as far as being able to make sure that you all were visible in the community and that your efforts as it relates to civil rights and justice was something that was embraced by everyone. When you look back over that time, what do you think was the biggest pushback? Because many people associated you guys with the Black Panthers.
And I think that was because we chose to wear a black beret.
That's right,
you know,
that's
and,
right, okay.
Then we had a button that we had that had the black fist on it, you know, and that type of thing. And a lot of the older blacks in the community were kind of like standoffish or like, well, you know, I don't know whether.
Did they think you were militant?
They thought we were.
Okay.
But the activities that we put on for the young people in the community kind of made people come around.
Okay.
You know, where we started giving like a bike race for the kids in Spring Valley Park and spring rallies where we would just come out and have music, you know, to draw the people there, and then we would speak, you know, and talk and pass out relevant information. One of the things we had was a 7-point community beautification plan called Ghetto or Gold Mine.
Right, I remember
You know,
that,
Ghetto or
yes.
Gold Mine.
The choice is yours, that's right.
And that was based on the fact that we understood that most cities grow out from downtown. And in Kansas City, you got Kansas City, Kansas, North Kansas City, keeping it from going those directions. So it had to come east, which is predominantly the black community.
Right.
So Ghetto or Gold Mine basically meant if we hold on to this, we beautify it, keep it clean, keep our houses, you know, kind of touched up and painted up, that they can't come in and condemn it and take it and call it urban renewal.
Right.
You know, and that when they do come, they're going to have to buy it.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to pay real money for it.
You know, and I would say as I look back, you certainly were an organization before your time, even though it was birthed out of the civil rights movement and what was going on at the time. I think about all of the wonderful things that were done in the community, the education opportunities for young people, the education opportunities for people who live in the communities, the help that was available to them, whether it was with utilities. I mean, it seems like everything was packaged and available right there in our community.
That's right.
And that there was a name that was known in the household. When people said SAC 20, they knew who you were, and they knew what the efforts were. I can remember the house on Prospect.
Right.
You know, when you guys purchased that, I remember just being involved in a lot of the community activities growing up and feeling like even though it was our community, I felt like it was something that we felt that we needed to be a part of. It wasn't something that we couldn't touch. It was ours. It was ours to move forward and to do the type of things that you all wanted to do, the conversations that were held. If there was an opportunity to have support in the Black community for businesses, for employment, for health, for education, we knew that the Social Action Committee of 20 would be there.
That's right.
Be a part of it.
You mentioned earlier about what was the pushback. I think it's important, especially at this time, 50 years later, to look at the pushback then and the pushback now.
Okay.
Then our biggest pushback were the people that wanted to keep the status quo and did not want us to make radical changes in how things were done, like listening to young people and then trying to set programs and activities that would fill the needs that they had, that but would yet affect the community at large. And I remember we tried to start our own skating rink. Almost all of the children in our community loved to skate.
Yes.
But there was no place but there was no place for them to skate that was their own. So SAC 20 worked with a developer and some engineers, and we got all of the dots, all of the I's dotted and T's crossed. But the majority community came down like a ton of bricks on the idea that if we started a skating rink, what it would do, it would deplete the business of the existing skating rink. So therefore,
now would that have been Rhythm Lane, which is on 31st Street, or would have been the one on 27th?
No, the one on 27th.
It was the one on 27th.
Okay.
And then as he began to make noises, then other outlying, even that weren't even in the community, began to make the noise. Right. And we had the first food stamp distribution center ever in the state of Missouri at 30th and Prospect, to be able to make food stamps and bill paying convenient for people in our neighborhood. And a lot of people pushed back on that, especially with Bernard at the time just being about 26 years old or something, and most of the people that he worked with were younger people. And then when we worked to start a sickle cell anemia campaign, sickle cell anemia first came to the forefront in our community because SAC 20 found out some of the young people that we were working with had sickle cell anemia issues, and we began to work to start sickle cell anemia activities, and the majority community began to push back, saying we didn't have doctors or whatever. So we worked with a number of folk and continued to work with sickle cell anemia. Anyway, the pushback came from the same place where you get a lot of pushback now, from people not wanting to listen to the actual needs and desires as expressed by community people and follow that.
Okay.
Right.
Ted, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, it's the same thing that Lebo was saying. We had resentment, from the status quo. Right. Because we were getting too much attention.
For services, once you provide services, you make a healthier community.
Right.
Yes,
we were providing the service that the existing people that were in control, let's say, were not providing. And by providing these different services, especially to the young people of the community, we became leaders. And by becoming leaders, you become targets. Okay. So.
And then let me mention, you mentioned that people identified us with the Black Panther Party, and I do want to say that was nothing to be ashamed about.
Oh, no, absolutely
nothing
not.
These guys were our friends. Pete O'Neill was my friend, still is, and when he started with the same kind of pushback that the rest of us had, only he was looking at it from a different kind of way. So we supported the breakfast program and health clinic for kids, education program for the kids, because we wanted the same kind of thing that we were doing to continue on. And when Pete was doing what he was doing, it just gives us the opportunity to help another person in our community to make it happen.
Absolutely, and thank you for clearing that up, because I don't want people saying, oh, they said on that show or she said on that show that you all did not want to be associated with them. What I'm saying is that people thought you were one and the same.
Oh yeah, and that was a good thing.
Yeah, it was a good thing, and I think that the causes going forward that came out of both groups, I think what happens is that people just go by what they think they know about organizations and not really know the history or the purpose of them, and then they develop their own preconceived notion of what they meant and what they stood for. These were organizations that happened or were birthed at that time because there was something that was not happening for us.
That's right.
And so when we look at the collaboration between the Black Panthers and the Social Action Committee of 20, we know that we had both of the organizations in the greater Kansas City area. However, they were separate entities that came together for the betterment of our community.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and one other quick thing on that, Marj, and it's interesting to be talking about this now. The Social Action Committee of 20, in its very beginning, the name was Black Committee of 20.
Black Committee.
And one of the things that that began to come up that we found, and I shouldn't say we, I really should just point directly to Bernard Powell. There were so many things that was phenomenal about that young man till you can't. Bernard thought of the idea that we get conflicted many times with as militants or as Panthers or as whatever. He said, but we got to look at the social aspects of what we do.
Right.
People have some needs in their homes. They have some needs with absentee landlords. They have some needs with all kinds of things. So we need to not only look at the radical side of engaging in the community, but we needed to look at the social side. Right. So when you see his ideas come into that, what it turns out is the Social Action Committee of 20.
Right, and what you're basically saying is that when you all realized that there was a problem, you found the solution.
Yes, that's absolutely.
You know, so if there was a food desert, you provided food.
Absolutely.
You know, if there was healthcare deficiencies, you made sure that services that were provided or people had ways. I remember the transportation that you all provided to some of the events, and again, the bicycle giveaways and the type of things that we have gotten away from in our community because we are, again, in that splintered thinking of, you know, that we can't work collaboratively together to get to the same point. So I appreciate that. I was a person who not only benefited from the services, but also benefited from the opportunity to be a part. Oh, yeah. And I just thank you guys for sticking together. It's very seldom in our community, not only in greater Kansas City, but throughout the United States as African Americans, that we will pull together. And what you said is that it was 20 organizations from the greater Kansas City area who got together and said, let's form the Social Action Committee of 20, which is something to be very proud of. Thankful that Bernard had the idea and the spirit to lead the vision that he was given. And every time I drive down Brooklyn, which I take that pathway often, I always look to the right if I'm going south to look at the park and the beautiful statue in his honor, and then I look to the left to the house, because I know that that's where he lived. And I don't know if his sister and him still own the property, but I don't go through that way without giving homage to the right and to the left.
Absolutely.
It's something that happened that's very, very visible in our community. Fast forward, because I know that we need to kind of bring closure to this. In 2018, some 50 years later, when we look at the plight of the African American community, there are similar strands of what was going on back in '68. You know, how would you, if SAC 20 were still alive and relevant? First of all, I'm going to ask the question: how many members are still living that were part of the original board of the 20?
The original board, I thought about it the other night. I think it's 8 of us left.
Okay, all right.
8 have passed on, and then it's
8 passed on.
Okay,
8 passed on, and there's 8 of us still left.
Okay, so if it was 20, it means 12.
Well,
we lost 2.
We lost a
some
couple
because
members
along the way.
along the way.
Okay, all right. So you believe the bottom line is 8 left.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
so
we had one guy that went to Hollywood to try to be active.
Oh, okay. So, but in the city, you believe there are 8.
We didn't lose anybody from any bad.
Right. And decided to leave the city. But in
go.
Kansas City, you believe there are 8 actual members who are here.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know that was it last year or a year before you were recognized by City Council?
Right. Year before last.
It was year before last 4-year anniversary, which was a great opportunity to give recognition to people who did so much in our community. Again, fast forwarding to 2018, similar strands, similar positions about where we are as an organization, as a country, and as a community. If you could do one thing, or bring one thing out of the backpack from SAC 20 of years ago, from both of you, what one thing would you bring?
Mine would be to reinforce point number 1 of SAC 27-point community beautification plan, Ghetto and Gold Mine. Visit your child's school at least once each month and join the PTA.
Yes.
And keep in mind that your child's education can only improve with your involvement.
Okay.
So that's what I would like to bring and keep out in the forefront, the importance of parents being involved in their child's education.
All right.
That's a really good question. And it's so many things, but the one thing that I think in relationship to today is that, you know, SAC 20 was literally the leader in getting young people registered to vote in this town. When the voting age turned to 18, it was SAC 20 that was in the high schools, on the streets, in the bars, in the churches, every place telling young people that this is going to turn to 18 and everyone needs to be registered to vote, because to be able to do the social things we need in our community, we need to get people to get out and vote. If I were to say one thing now that could go back at this day and time, is young people, get out and vote.
Very
that
strong
your
message.
whole community counts on you to be able to get out and vote. And let me might add that I think that there are a number of really strong young people that we have involved with our political and our social networks in the community now. On the city council, on the school board, got community groups, Pat Clark and those guys out there. We've got a good, we've got a good, solid, strong group of young people.
Thank you for identifying me as being young. I appreciate that.
Seriously, we got people we can listen to now that are actually involved. At that time, we had to break the ice for young people to get involved. Right. I would encourage now, make sure and listen to young people. Young people, speak up. No matter what we say to you, continue to speak up for what you believe in. We need to hear you.
Yes, I think those are two very good points. And as we close the show, I'd just like to say thank you so much again for coming out and sharing with us information that we cannot forget. We cannot forget our history, because when we forget history, history repeats itself. We have some bright spots and some bright stars in the greater Kansas City area.
Yes, we do.
And we just have to remember, you know, the vision that we put forth is the reality that we're going to see. We have to make sure that we walk in that vision of those things that we'd like to see for our community. And I'm just happy to be a part and to have known the members of SAC 20 and the great works that you guys have done, continue to do, and that as you drive down Brooklyn, if you look to your right, you'll see the beautiful statue. If you look to the left, you will see the home in which the vision was birthed. Again, we thank you for joining us. I always close the show with saying, everyone talks about change, and if change is going to be inevitable, we have to be the change we want to see.
This program is sponsored by